Welcome to Pin and Reel, where we discuss comic books, movies, books, and more. I'm your host, Uncle Joel. Let's get into it. Future State Black Adam. Now, I had a bit of trouble tracking down this story. It didn't take me too long, but it was unnecessarily difficult for one specific reason. See, I finished the Future State Shazam story, and that story ended saying to be continued in Future State Black Adam. The only problem being, when I searched Future State Black Adam on Comixology, nothing came up. So I just searched Future State in general and scrolled through everything, and there was no Black Adam book. And so it didn't take too much Googling to find out where Black Adam was, and that it was a backup in Suicide Squad. But I feel that DC should have been a little bit more clear about that. To be continued in Future State Black Adam as seen in Future State Suicide Squad. Now that's all it would have taken, and it would have been a lot easier to locate it. But I digress. That's a small annoyance, and if you want to hear my thoughts on the frustration with this whole story arc with the unkindness, then you can check out my video on Future State Shazam, where I spent a little bit too much time rambling on about that issue. But here, in Future State Black Adam, we pick up in the 853rd century, with the Justice League 1,000,000 as introduced in Grant Morrison's Justice League run, as well as Superman Prime, the golden, godlike Superman in a far-flung future who has a Green Lantern ring and is virtually omnipotent. And the story very quickly goes off the rails with the introduction of Superman Prime. As in previous presentations of this character, like I said, he's nearly omnipotent. He's just this immensely, insanely powerful character. But then he has a run-in with the Unkindness, who, quick side note, is not the same unkindness as seen at the end of Shazam. That doesn't come in until the second issue of Black Adam for some reason. But instead, it's this legion of multiple different evil magical beings, including the Seven Deadly Sins, Vandal Savage, an evil dove, and so on. And so Superman Prime is confronted with this swarm of evil beings, and they quickly take him out. Now, I know canonically Superman has always had a weakness to magic, and so that could explain how Superman Prime was taken out so easily. And I think that might have been the purpose here of introducing Superman Prime, who is just supposed to be this unimaginably powerful character. And so you have this immensely powerful character, and you're presented with the villains, and they wipe the floor with him. And so that's supposed to set the stage for just how big of a threat this is. But it plays out incredibly quickly, over only 3 or 4 pages. And so I don't think it's really effective at doing what it's trying to do. As such, this Black Adam story falls prey to the typical Future State rush, in that it's trying to cram way too much story down into only 2 issues. And similarly, when we get the introduction of Black Adam, when the Justice League goes and finds Black Adam, he has lived for a very long time as a peaceful being. And as such, he doesn't really want to get involved with the conflict. Only then we're presented with one little bit of information, which, yes, is significant, but the character just turns on a dime, and with this single revelation, all of a sudden he goes from a pacifist to, okay, yes, I'm going to help fight to save the universe. You know, there is no internal conflict, and there is no development of the character in the situation. It's just, he goes from one state, he gets this information, all of a sudden he's in a completely different state. And again, it's that Future State rush. You have to move the character along quickly and move the story along quickly, so you don't have time to really develop what the character would actually be going through. You know, that sort of drastic change in ideology and attitude and outlook should have come across, over an entire story arc, over 6 issues or so, and watch him gradually wrestle with this until finally he gives in to, no, this is the only option, I have to fight. But since this is Future State and they only have 2 issues, let's just have it all happen in a couple of panels. And then when we shift to issue 2, all of a sudden we have the unkindness that was seen at the end of Shazam as the first image in this book. It's as though they didn't want to reveal it in the first issue so as to not spoil Shazam, but then not really explain its presence in the second issue and just act like it had been there all along. And it just all feels very disjointed and like weak storytelling split across multiple different series by multiple different writers. You've got at least 4 different stories by multiple different writers that were all coming out concurrently, but one takes place after another, but you don't want one to spoil another, and it just gets to be a jumbled mess, and that really plays out here in Black Adam. And we get the introduction of the Gold Beetle, who is a descendant of both Blue Beetle and Booster Gold, which I do think is an interesting way of developing the lineage of these 2 different characters who are great friends. Like having Superman and Batman being great friends for such a long time, and seeing several generations down the line, their children or grandchildren or whatever get married and have a child that is a cross between the 2. There's a lot of potential for how they could play out that dynamic. Unfortunately, once again, Future State Rush hits, and she really only shows up to provide a necessary tool, provide a little bit of information, and then she's gone. And what the book does do decently is exploring a little bit of the state of magic in the far future. But again, as with everything else in this book, it's all very rushed, and we don't really get a lot of time to delve into it that well. They introduce a number of interesting concepts. For instance, we have the Quintessence making an appearance, and the members of this mystical high council are very interesting. We've got a character that is called Barba, which looks like it's Barda, but I don't know why we have the B instead of the D. I can only assume this is Big Barda's child or grandchild or some sort of descendant, but that's not really explained or explored, and she pretty much just appears and doesn't really have any role to play. And we also have Sinestro appearing as one of the members of this mystical high council. But again, he makes an appearance, and it's supposed to have this mystical element to it and make you really question what's going on? How have these characters changed so much, and what has them in these roles? But then they're not explored at all. And a lot of that could just be the Future State Rush, and in that there's no room to really explore all of these different ideas. And so much of this book and so much of Future State for me seems to be just, let's throw a bunch of different random ideas in here to make it feel really cool and different, but we're not going to do anything with it, and we're just going to move on. Now, all of those complaints being said, I did kind of enjoy this book. It's not great. As you've already heard, there are a lot of aspects of it that I find very frustrating, but the story being presented and the ideas being presented were interesting enough that I didn't wind up hating the book. As with most of the Future State stories that I've read so far, I very much feel like this is a case of this could have been really good if given 6 to 12 or more issues to really explore the ideas being put forward. As it is, it winds up kind of a clown car of ideas, just crammed chock full of random things that have no real payoff. Now, the one bit that I find interesting is the way the book ends. It sets it up in such a way that it feels like it could continue post-Infinite Frontier. So we may actually see the ramifications of this story play out in some other book in the future. I'm thinking probably the Justice League, since we know from promotional material that Black Adam is in the Justice League, written by Brian Michael Bendis. So whether that is the same Black Adam from this book, or it's the Black Adam that should be in the current timeline, or if there are now 2 different Black Adams in the current timeline as a result of this Future State book, it's not entirely clear. But yeah, overall, I would say this is just a very mixed bag. There's a lot of good here, there's a lot of bad. It's not executed great. I really didn't like the crossover across Flash, Teen Titans, Shazam, and now Black Adam. I felt like that was very, very poorly executed. And the only real solace I get from all of that is that it may have ramifications that play out in other comics going forward. So honestly, I would say at this point, if you're picking up Future State Suicide Squad specifically for Black Adam, probably want to pass. It's not really worth the price of entry. But if you are picking up Suicide Squad anyways, then I would say it is worth reading. There are a lot of interesting ideas. They're just really rushed in order to make it all fit within 2 issues. So overall, I would say Future State does present a lot of very interesting things, and I am curious to see how it all plays out in the future. But for all of these books trying to cram a bunch of story into just 2 issues, and especially when the books are trying to have crossovers within those limitations, I do feel like it's very lacking. I haven't read the Batman books, but that seems to be where they're given the most room to really flesh things out and explore the concepts. But for all of the other books, from what I've seen and from what I've read, I feel like it's a very interesting idea, presents a lot of good concepts, it's just not executed the best. But if you've read Future State Black Adam, what did you think? Did you feel that the major story beats were just rushed through too quickly? Are you curious to see how this plays out in comics going forward? Do you agree that the 2-issue story arcs of Future State puts an unnecessary strain on the types of stories being told? Let me know your thoughts down in the comments. I'm really curious to hear what you think. If you could help me out by hitting like, I'd really appreciate it. Be sure to hit subscribe so you don't miss out on future comic book coverage such as Saga and Jason Aaron's Avengers. And I look forward to discussing comics with you again in the future. And until next time, this is Uncle Joel saying, stay tangible.